Commander Vector studied the data file on his screen with growing disappointment. The humans wanted to join the coalition military forces. They wanted to fight on the front lines. They wanted to prove themselves in combat against the most dangerous enemies in the galaxy. It was a terrible idea. Vector had been a soldier for 40 years. He had fought in more battles than he could count. He had seen hundreds of different species try to become warriors. Most of them failed. See, the ones who succeeded were always the strong ones, the tough ones, the ones with natural armor, or deadly claws, or powerful muscles. Humans had none of these things. He looked at the biological scan of a typical human soldier. The numbers were not impressive. They came from a planet with barely any gravity. Their skin was soft and easy to tear. They had no natural weapons at all. No claws, no fangs, no poison, nothing. A single hit from a Kresh warrior would cut them in half. A drop of acid from a thornback would melt through their flesh in seconds. Vector clicked his mandibles together in frustration. Why did the humans think they could survive in real combat? Their planet Earth was supposed to be dangerous, but Vector had read the reports. Earth had normal oxygen levels. The temperature was comfortable. The gravity was weak. Compared to his own homeworld, Earth was practically a vacation resort. His assistant, Zarek, entered the command room. Zarek had 4 arms and could lift 3 times what a human could lift. He was a proper soldier. "Sir, the human liaison officer is here again. He wants to speak with you about combat assignments." Vector sighed. The human officer was named Jake Morrison. He was polite and professional, but he was also incredibly stubborn. For 3 weeks, Morrison had been asking for the same thing. He wanted human soldiers placed in combat units. He wanted them fighting alongside coalition warriors in the most dangerous missions. "Tell him the same thing I told him yesterday," Vector said. "Humans will be assigned to supply duties. They can transport equipment, run medical supplies, maintain the ships. They will not be placed in combat situations." "He knows that, sir. He keeps coming back anyway." "Then he is wasting both his time and mine." But Zarek did not leave. He stood there, looking uncomfortable. "What is it?" Vector asked. "Sir, the human is waiting outside right now. He says he will wait as long as necessary. He has been standing there for 6 hours. Vector felt his temper rising. 6 hours? The human had been standing outside his office for 6 hours, just for a chance to talk? Fine, send him in. Jake Morrison entered the room a moment later. He was tall for a human, but still shorter than Vector. He had dark hair and steady eyes. His uniform was clean and pressed. He saluted properly. "Commander Vector, thank you for seeing me. You have 5 minutes, Lieutenant Morrison. Speak." Morrison did not waste time. "Sir, I understand your concerns about human fragility. Our bodies are not as naturally armored as other species, but we have other qualities that make us valuable in combat. We are adaptable. We can endure harsh conditions. We never give up." "Noble words," Vector said, "but words do not stop claws or bullets. Your soldiers will die in minutes against real enemies. Maybe. But maybe not. You have not seen us fight yet. You are making assumptions based on our biology. But war is not just about who has the thickest armor or the sharpest claws. It is about who can keep fighting when things go wrong." Vector leaned forward. "And you think humans can do this?" "I know we can. We did not get off our planet by being weak, Commander. We fought our way up from nothing. We survived ice ages and diseases and wars against ourselves. We built everything we have through sheer determination. That counts for something. It counts for very little when a ravager tears your head off." Morrison did not flinch. "Then let us prove ourselves. Give us one chance, one mission. If we fail, you can assign us to supply duty forever. But if we succeed, You consider using us in real combat roles." Vector wanted to say no. Every instinct told him this was a mistake. Humans were too soft, too weak, too unprepared. They would get themselves killed and probably get other soldiers killed trying to rescue them. But there was something in Morrison's eyes. A certainty. A confidence that did not match his species' physical limitations. "I will think about it," Vector said finally. "That is all you will get from me today." Dismissed. Morrison saluted again and left without argument. Vector watched him go and shook his head. Humans were strange. They should know their own limitations. They should accept that some species were simply not meant for combat. 2 weeks later, everything changed. The Ravagers attacked. The Ravagers were an ancient nightmare. They were a hive species that consumed everything in their path. They bred fast and fought without fear. Whole colonies had disappeared when the Ravagers found them. Now they were pushing into coalition space. An emergency call came from Station Outpost 7. 20,000 civilians were trapped there. The Ravagers would reach the station in hours. Someone needed to evacuate those people before the monsters arrived. Vector assembled his best warriors. They would go to the station, load the civilians onto transport ships, and get out before the Ravagers showed up. It was a simple mission. Simple, but dangerous. Jake Morrison appeared at his command station. "Commander, human forces volunteer for the evacuation mission." Vector almost laughed. "Absolutely not. This will likely become a combat situation. I need real warriors. Not fragile humans who will break at the first sign of trouble." 9. 9. 9. 9. 9. "Sir, think about it logically. Your warriors are your best fighters. If the Ravagers arrive early, you will need those fighters holding the defensive positions. Let my people handle moving the civilians. We are good at that. We can move fast, and we do not panic. Simple and basic English, and without hating." 11:50 a.m. Vector considered Morrison's words. The human had a point. If fighting broke out, he would need his strongest warriors on the defensive lines. The humans could handle the evacuation work. It was simple enough. Load civilians onto ships and get them out. Even humans could manage that without getting hurt. "Fine," Vector said. "But you will work in the safest sectors only. Stay far away from the expected Ravager approach routes. If you see any enemies, you run. Do you understand me, Lieutenant?" "Understood, Commander." "We will not let you down." The evacuation began the next morning. Vector's warriors established defensive positions around the station, while transport ships landed to collect civilians. Everything was organized and efficient. The Ravagers were still 6 hours away according to long-range sensors. There was plenty of time. Then the sensors detected something impossible. A smaller Ravager force had appeared directly above the station. They must have been using some new technology to hide their approach. Dozens of boarding pods slammed into the station's surface. Ravagers poured out of the pods and into the corridors where thousands of civilians were still waiting to evacuate. "All units fall back to defensive positions," Vector shouted into his communicator. His tactical map showed red enemy markers spreading through the station like a disease. "Protect the civilians. If you cannot hold a sector, fall back to the next defensive line." The carefully planned evacuation turned into chaos. Ravagers were everywhere. They moved fast and killed faster. Their claws could tear through metal. Their mandibles could bite through bone. Vector's warriors fought bravely, but there were too many enemies. Several sectors had to be abandoned. Civilians ran in panic, trying to reach the transport ships. Then Morrison's voice came through on the communication channel. He sounded calm, despite the chaos around them. "Commander, this is Morrison. Human squads are moving towards Sector 7. That is where the largest group of civilians is trapped." "Negative," Vector snapped. Fall back to the transports immediately. Sector 7 is overrun with Ravagers. You cannot fight them. Sir, there are 300 civilians in Sector 7. Most of them are children. If someone does not hold that corridor, they will all die. Vector pulled up the tactical feed for Sector 7. His blood went cold. 300 civilians were pinned against a sealed emergency door. Between them and safety was a swarm of Ravagers. At least 50 of the creatures. The nearest coalition combat team was 10 minutes away. In 10 minutes, everyone in that sector would be dead. Morrison, listen to me carefully. You do not have the weapons or training to fight that many Ravagers. You will die in the first minute. Fall back now. That is a direct order. There was a pause. Vector could hear weapon fire and screaming in the background. Commander, we are already moving in. Watch your tactical feed. We will show you what humans can do when there is no other choice. The communication channel went silent. Vector switched his main display to show the security cameras in Sector 7. He expected to watch the humans die quickly. They deserved that much. Vector, someone should witness their bravery even if it was foolish bravery. What he saw instead made him forget to breathe. The first human to appear on the screen was a woman. Her name tag read Sullivan. She was running at full speed down the corridor toward the Ravagers. Her armor already had burn marks on it. Behind her, more humans followed in a tight formation. They moved together like they had trained for this exact situation 1,000 times. They hit the Ravager position like a hammer. Sullivan crashed into the first Ravager with her shoulder. The creature went flying backward into its companions. In that moment of confusion, the human squad poured through the gap. A man named Danny Price shot 3 times. Each bullet hit a different Ravager in the head. Perfect shots. No wasted ammunition. No panic. Another human named Lisa Hayes dropped to one knee and fired down a side tunnel. 2 Ravagers were trying to flank them. She killed both before they could take 3 steps. But it was a young soldier named Ben Carter who shocked Vector the most. A Ravager broke through the human formation and lunged at the trapped civilians. Carter threw himself between the creature and the children. The Ravager's claw stabbed completely through Carter's shoulder. The young human screamed, but he did not fall down. Instead, he grabbed the claw that was stuck in his body with his free hand. He held onto it so the Ravager could not pull away. Then, he fired his rifle upward into the creature's soft underside until it stopped moving. "Carter is hit," Sullivan shouted. "I am fine," Carter yelled back. Blood was pouring down his armor. He yanked the Ravager's claw out of his shoulder with a horrible wet sound. "Keep moving forward." They pushed deeper into the corridor. Every meter cost them. For every Ravager they killed, 2 more appeared. The creatures were learning the human tactics. They started attacking from different angles. Sullivan took a spray of acid to her face. Her helmet's faceplate melted. She fell backward with half her face burned. Danny Price grabbed her and dragged her behind cover. "We cannot hold this position," Danny shouted into his communicator. "We need reinforcements or we need to retreat." Vector opened the command channel. "Human squad, this is Commander Vector. Coalition forces are 4 minutes away. Fall back to the rally point and we will take over the defense." "Sir, we cannot do that," Morrison said. His breathing was heavy. Vector could hear the sounds of close combat in the background. "The civilians are still pinned here. If we leave, the Ravagers will break through that emergency shelter door in less than 1 minute. These people will all die. Then you will die with them. That is not acceptable, Lieutenant." Morrison's response was quiet but firm. "Maybe we will die. But that is the job, is it not? Someone has to stand here. Someone has to hold this ground until help arrives. That is what soldiers do." Vector stared at his tactical display. The situation was impossible. The humans were outnumbered 20-1. They were wounded and running low on ammunition. They had no chance of surviving another 4 minutes. And yet they were not retreating. All coalition forces, maximum speed to Sector 7. Vector commanded. His voice was urgent. Human squad, we are coming as fast as we can. Hold your position. We will be here, Commander, Morrison said. We are not going anywhere. Please. 162. 3 minutes and 40 seconds later, Coalition combat units reached Sector 7. The Coalition warriors arrived, expecting to find dead humans. What they found instead was something none of them would ever forget. The corridor looked like a slaughterhouse. Dead Ravagers were piled everywhere. The walls were black with burn marks. The floor was covered in blood and acid. The emergency lights flickered across a scene that looked like something from a nightmare. And in the middle of it all, the humans were still standing. Kate Sullivan was leaning against the wall. Half her face was wrapped in torn cloth where the acid had burned her. She held her rifle across her knee, still watching the corridor for any new threats. Her hands did not shake. Her aim did not waver. Danny Price had lost his helmet. Blood ran down his face from a dozen cuts, but his eyes were clear and focused. He stood in a defensive position, ready to shoot anything that moved. Ben Carter sat in a pool of his own blood. His face was white as paper. Anyone could see he had lost too much blood, but his finger was still on his rifle's trigger. He was still ready to fight. Jake Morrison stood directly in front of the emergency shelter door. His armor was torn to pieces. A Ravager's claw was still stuck in his leg. He was using his pistol now, firing with steady precision at any Ravager that tried to get past the arriving Coalition forces. All 300 civilians behind that door were alive. Sector 7 is secure, Morrison reported. His voice was calm, even though he looked like he had been through hell. Civilians are ready for extraction, Commander. Vector watched through the video feed as medical teams rushed forward. Kate waved them away and pointed at Ben first. Danny was already helping wounded civilians toward the transport ships. He refused medical treatment until every civilian was safe. Lieutenant Morrison, Vector said slowly. Carter is critical but alive. Sullivan needs treatment for the acid burns. We have about 12 people with various injuries. But no one died, sir. No one died. They had stood against overwhelming force, and every single human had survived. How? Vector asked. He had not meant to ask the question out loud, but it escaped anyway. You are not stronger than Ravagers. You are not faster. You do not have thick armor or natural weapons. By every measure, you should have died in that corridor. Morrison looked up at the video camera. Despite his wounds and exhaustion, he almost smiled. With respect, Commander, you have been measuring the wrong things. 2 days later, Vector visited the human medical bay on his ship. He needed to understand what had happened in Sector 7. His tactical analysts had reviewed the battle recordings a dozen times. None of them could explain how the humans had survived. The medical bay was quiet. Ben Carter was in a medical coma while machines repaired the damage to his body. Kate Sullivan sat up in her bed. The right side of her face was covered in synthetic skin that would take weeks to heal completely. She was playing some kind of game on a small device. Morrison was out of bed even though the doctors had told him to rest. His leg was in a metal brace. He looked up when Vector entered. Commander, did you come to tell us we are going back to supply duty? No, Vector said. He pulled up a chair and sat down. I came to understand what happened. We have analyzed every second of the Sector 7 engagement. According to every tactical simulation, your squad should have been eliminated in the first minute, yet you held for 7. Some of my analysts think our sensors made a mistake. Morrison laughed, then winced because the movement hurt his injuries. No mistake, Commander. We just did what humans always do. We refused to give up. That is not an explanation. Is it not? Kate called from her bed. She put down her game and looked at them. "Commander, can I ask you something? How long can your species fight without food?" Vector was confused by the strange question. "About 4 days before our combat ability starts to weaken." "Why does that matter?" "Humans can go weeks without food," Kate said. "Months if we have water. And we can keep fighting the whole time. It will hurt. We will get slower. But we will not stop. That is not relevant to..." "How long can you stay awake?" Danny Price interrupted from across the room. He was supposed to be resting, but apparently no one could make him sleep. 2 days. Maybe 3 in an emergency situation. Humans have fought battles after staying awake for 6 days straight, Danny said. There is a recorded case of one soldier who stayed awake for 11 days during a long siege. By the end, he was hearing things that were not there. But he kept fighting anyway. 2. Morrison shifted his weight and adjusted his leg brace. "Commander, you have been thinking about our weaknesses, our thin skin, our low gravity tolerance, our lack of natural weapons. But you have not been thinking about our strengths." "Which are what?" "We are endurance hunters," Morrison said simply. "That is what humans evolved to be. On Earth, we did not have the speed to catch fast animals. We did not have the strength to overpower big animals. So we chased them. We chased them for hours, for days, if necessary. We followed them until they collapsed from exhaustion. Then we walked up and killed them while they were too tired to fight back." Vector tried to understand this. "You are saying you simply outlasted the Ravagers?" "In a way, yes." Kate swung her legs out of bed. A medical technician tried to stop her, but she ignored him. "Commander, when your people feel pain, what happens?" "We stop fighting. Pain is a warning signal. To ignore it would cause permanent damage to our bodies." "Right. That makes sense." Kate touched her bandaged face. "We have this ability to just keep going. The pain does not stop. It does not even get less. We just decide that it does not matter. We push through it." "That is insane." "Probably," Danny agreed. He was smiling. "But that is also why we are still alive. Your warriors are tougher than us, stronger than us, better armored than us. But when they reach their limit, they stop. When we reach our limit, we keep going, anyway." Morrison pulled up a video screen showing footage from the Sector 7 fight. He pointed to a specific moment where Kate had been hit with acid. "Watch what happens here. That is a serious chemical burn on her face." Kate's pain sensors are screaming at her to stop, to get medical help, to protect herself. Watch what she does instead. On the screen, Kate stumbled and fell to one knee. Then she stood back up and kept fighting. She did not slow down. She did not hesitate. She just kept moving forward. "Humans have a saying," Morrison continued. "Pain is just weakness leaving the body." It is not scientifically true, obviously, but it shows how we think. We do not see pain as a stop sign. We see it as something to overcome. But the damage to your bodies is real, yes. And we will suffer from it for a long time. Morrison gestured around the medical bay. Every person in this room will be dealing with these injuries for months, maybe years. Carter might never have full use of his arm again. Kate will have scars on her face for the rest of her life. I will probably walk with a limp forever. Then why? Vector demanded. Why push yourself to permanent injury? Because those civilians needed 7 minutes, Kate said quietly. And we had 7 minutes to give them. It really is that simple, Commander. Vector looked around the medical bay. At the humans, with their bandages and burns and broken bodies. All of them were acting like they had just finished normal training exercise. Not like they had barely survived a desperate fight against impossible odds. Your species is insane, he said finally. Yes, Morrison agreed. We really are. So, what about those frontline combat positions? 3 months later, Vector stood on the bridge of his ship and watched another battle develop. The Ravagers had pushed deep into Coalition space. Now there had to be a major fight at a mining world called Thresh 9. The planet was mostly empty, except for mines and processing facilities. But losing it would expose 3 major colonies to Ravager attack. The ground battle was fierce. Coalition forces held defensive positions along reinforced bunkers, but the Ravagers kept pushing. They had learned Coalition tactics. They found weaknesses and exploited them. And they found a big weakness. "Commander, we have a breach in Sector 9, Zarek reported. His voice was tight with worry. Multiple Ravager shock troops have entered the underground facility. If they reach the geothermal power core, the explosion will destroy our entire southern defensive line. Vector looked at the tactical map. Sector 9 was a maintenance complex underground. All narrow tunnels and vertical shafts. Fighting there would be close-quarters chaos. The kind of place where Ravager natural weapons gave them every advantage. The nearest Coalition combat unit was 30 minutes away. "Who is closest to the breach point?" "Human engineering team, sir. They were doing reactor maintenance. 20 people with minimal weapons." Vector felt frustration rise in his chest. 20 humans with engineering tools against a Ravager shock force. It would be a massacre. But there was no choice. If someone did not slow down the Ravagers, thousands of soldiers would die when the reactor exploded. He opened the communication channel. "Human engineering team. This is Commander Vector. Ravager shock troops are heading toward your position. Fall back immediately to 2. Commander, this is Chief Engineer Paul Stevens. We understand the situation." The human's voice was calm, almost casual. "Sir, we cannot fall back. If the Ravagers reach the reactor core, they will destabilize it. Accident or on purpose, it does not matter. This whole section will explode. I understand that, Chief, but you do not have the personnel or weapons to stop them." "Then we will improvise, sir." There was a sound of heavy equipment moving in the background. "We are not engineers because we like following instruction manuals, Commander. We are engineers because we are good at solving problems." "Chief Stevens." "Respectfully, sir, we are busy right now. Engineering team out." The channel went silent. Vector pulled up the security camera feed from Sector 9. What he saw made him want to charge Stevens with being recklessly insane. If the man survived long enough to face charges, the humans were not running away. They were preparing for battle. Chief Paul Stevens was a big man, with gray hair and a face that showed years of hard work. He moved through his team with calm efficiency, pointing and giving orders. "Crane, I need you to rig the emergency doors. Make them open and close on my command, not automatically. Greg, take half our welding torches and set them up like directional explosives. Amy, how much compressed coolant do we have in storage?" 8 tanks, Chief, a young woman reported. "Each one pressurized to maximum safe levels." "Good. I want those safety limits exceeded. Increase pressure by 30%. If they rupture, they will rupture like bombs." 1. "Chief, that is extremely dangerous. So are the Ravagers. Get it done now." Greg Ross was a thin man who looked more like a teacher than an engineer, but he was already positioning welding torches in a half-circle pattern. "Chief, if we light all of these at once, the oxygen in this tunnel will flash burn. Then, we will hold our breath. Amy, once those coolant tanks are ready, position them at the tunnel junction. We will use them to create a pressure blast that funnels the Ravagers into our kill zone." On the bridge, Vector watched in amazement as the humans transformed their maintenance tunnel into a trap. They were using industrial equipment as weapons, making bombs from coolant tanks, rigging doors to become crushing hazards. "They are completely insane," Zarek said quietly. "Yes," Vector agreed. But watch what they do with that insanity. The Ravagers reached the tunnel 15 minutes later. It was a full shock force. 25 heavily armored warriors bred specifically for underground fighting. They came in fast, expecting to sweep through any resistance and reach the reactor core in minutes. Instead, they ran straight into Paul Stevens and his trap. The humans had split into two groups. The first group, led by Stevens, positioned themselves at the tunnel entrance. They had basic weapons and engineering tools modified into crude clubs. Anything they could use to make noise and draw attention. They wanted the Ravagers to chase them. "Contact!" Stevens shouted as the first Ravager came around the corner. He raised a plasma cutter and used it like a flamethrower, spraying superheated gas across the creature's face. It was not enough to kill the Ravager, but it was enough to make it angry. The Ravagers charged forward. Stevens and his team ran. They fell back exactly as planned, drawing the Ravagers deeper into the prepared area. They moved in a controlled retreat, never turning their backs completely, always keeping just enough distance to make the Ravagers keep chasing. "Now, Amy!" Stevens shouted. Amy triggered the overpressurized coolant tanks. They exploded with massive force. The explosions did not kill the Ravagers, but created a huge pressure wave that pushed them directly into the semicircle of welding torches. "Light them!" Stevens commanded. Greg triggered all the torches at once. The tunnel became a wall of fire. Ravagers shrieked as their armor superheated and cracked. The ones in front tried to retreat, but the pressure wave had packed them together so tightly they could not move. Then the humans triggered the emergency doors. The massive blast doors were designed to seal off reactor sections during emergencies. They slammed shut with thousands of tons of force. 3 Ravagers were caught directly in the closing path. The doors crushed them instantly. The remaining Ravagers found themselves trapped in a confined space, with nowhere to run. They were disoriented and damaged. Stevens and his team were already moving through maintenance passages and emergency access routes that only engineers knew about. What followed was not really a battle. It was an execution. The humans used the facility itself as a weapon. They dropped heavy equipment from overhead walkways. They vented steam from damaged pipes. They even manipulated the gravity plates to throw the Ravagers off balance. Paul Stevens personally took down the last Ravager by overloading a magnetic containment field. It created an electromagnetic pulse that disabled the creature's nervous system long enough for Stevens to finish it with an industrial nail gun. 20 minutes after first contact, the tunnel was silent, except for hissing damaged equipment and heavy human breathing. "Commander Vector," Stevens reported. His voice was hoarse and tired. "Engineering team reporting. Ravager force eliminated. Reactor core is secure. We have 3 wounded, 1 critical, but everyone else can still work. We will need cleanup crews down here, though. It is quite a mess." Vector stared at his display screen. An engineering team. 20 lightly armed humans with no combat training, using mining equipment and improvised explosives, had eliminated a Ravager shock force that should have torn through them like paper. "Chief Stevens, what you just did was the most recklessly dangerous operation I have ever witnessed." "Probably, sir, but it worked." "How did you know it would work?" There was a pause. When Stevens spoke again, there was humor in his voice. "Commander, I have been maintaining reactors in dangerous places for 23 years. Before that, I was a combat engineer in the human military. You know what I learned? Humans do not win because we are the strongest or the fastest. We win because when we are backed into a corner, we get creative, and we do not quit until either we are dead or the problem is solved. That is not military tactics. That is a life philosophy. It is the human philosophy, sir. We are not built to be warriors. We are built to be survivors, and survivors do whatever it takes to survive." The battle for Thresh 9 lasted another 2 weeks. But the tide had turned. With the reactor core secure, coalition forces held their defensive lines. The Ravagers, faced with an enemy that refused to break no matter how hard they pushed, eventually withdrew to regroup. Vec-Thor called a command meeting to discuss the battle results. Representatives from every coalition species attended. This time, for the first time, a full group of human officers was present. Lieutenant Jake Morrison was there. His leg was still in a brace, but healing. Paul Stevens attended too, looking uncomfortable in his dress uniform. They stood with the other humans, no longer in the back of the room but positioned with the other combat commanders. "We need to discuss humans," Vec-Thor began. The room went completely silent. When humanity asked to join the coalition, I believed they were too fragile for frontline combat. I assigned them to support roles because I thought they would be killed quickly in real fights. He pulled up footage from the Sector 7 engagement. Kate Sullivan with her burned face. Ben Carter covered in blood. Morrison standing in front of that shelter door with a Ravager claw stuck in his leg. "I was wrong," Vec-Thor said simply. "I judged humans based on their physical limitations and completely missed their psychological strengths. They have qualities that cannot be measured by gravity tolerance or armor thickness." He switched to footage from Thresh 9, showing Paul Stevens and his engineering team turning their maintenance tunnel into a battlefield. Humans have something they call endurance, but it is more than just physical stamina. It is a refusal to accept defeat, an ability to push through pain, fear, and exhaustion that would make any logical being stop fighting. They do not have the strongest bodies in the galaxy, but they have the strongest wills. A Kresh commander spoke up. He was a massive creature covered in natural armor. "Commander Vec-Thor, are you saying humans are better warriors than the rest of us?" "No," Vec-Thor said. "In direct single combat, a Kresh warrior would defeat a human easily. Your natural weapons, your armor, your strength are all superior. But war is not just about direct combat. It is about who can endure longer, who can keep fighting when every logical reason says to stop. And in that measure, humans have no equal in this galaxy." He turned to Morrison. "Lieutenant, I am recommending that human forces be fully integrated into all coalition combat units, not as support personnel, but as full combat soldiers. Furthermore, I am requesting that human officers be placed in command positions for long, difficult operations." Morrison's eyebrows rose in surprise. "Command positions, sir? We are the newest species here. We have much to learn about fighting galactic wars. You have tactical knowledge to gain." "Yes," Vec-Thor agreed. "But you have something more valuable. You understand how to fight when victory seems impossible. You understand how to inspire others to keep moving when they want to give up. These are not skills that can be taught, Lieutenant. These are qualities your species brings naturally to the coalition. Claude is AI and can make mistakes. Please double-check responses. Sonnet 4.5.